Let's talk about how to negate quantified statements, including universal statements and existential statements. Well, let's take a look at the first statement here. All students in this class are computer science major. And let's negate this one. Please note that a typical mistake that students usually make is to negate it like this way. All students in this class are not computer science computer science majors. So that's a typical mistake to negate a statement like that. Actually, what is the correct way to negate it? Just put the not in the front, right? It is not the case that all students in this class are computer science major, or just say not all students in this class are computer science major. Well, sometimes it might be useful to just visualize the situation. Like suppose this is the class. We have 5 students, A, B, C, D, E, right? So now think about this carefully. Not all of them are computer science major. Not all of them are computer science major, right? So it is equivalent to say that means somebody has to be not computer science major. At least one of those can be is not computer science major. That's what this is saying. When we say not all are computer science major, it is equivalent to say at least one is not computer science major. So that's what the negation is, right? And again, if you can recall that I mentioned that a common mistake is all students in this class are not computer science major, which is saying all of them, they're not computer science major, which is certainly different from this negation. So this is the correct one. It's equivalent to this whole thing. Now, to actually derive a kind of like a formula, which we call it theorem 3.2.1, the negation of this form, this is a universal statement. And let's try to write that by introducing variable into symbolic form. So all, that means for all, right? This is a universal statement. For all students, this is a noun. That's where we introduce our variable x in a set. Let's call this set, just give a generic letter, say D. D in this case is all the students in this class. So that's the set we're talking about. And sometimes if this is clear enough, we just skip this set when there's no misunderstanding, right? So let's continue. So the statement is X is computer science major. That will be our predicate. X is CSC major. So that's the symbolic form of this statement, this universal statement, after we introduce variable. Now, its negation. So its negation is right here. Negation, which is this one. So at least, that means there exists at least one, right? There exists. So this is a existential statement. So I'm going to say there exists one student. That's where we introduce the X in this class. If you remember, when we write there exists, it goes with such that always goes with the exist. So such that X, student X is not computer science major. Student X is, try to emphasize this not, because not was not in the original statement, but when we negate it, it is there. CSC major. Okay, so now we can formalize this result. How do we negate this universal statement? It becomes an existential statement, and where the predicate should be negated, like this predicate should be negated. Therefore, I'm going to write the negation of this for all x in D, Q of x. This is our Q of x in this particular example. It will be there exists x in D such that not Q of X, we have to negate the Q of X. So this is the theorem 3.2.1, how to negate a universal statement. Now, in summary, negation of a universal statement is equivalent to an existential statement. And other words, if you have all, every, any, like here, all students, and we are gonna negate it using some, do or are not, excuse me, or at least one is or does not, and so on and so forth. But let's look at another example here. This statement is some students in this class are computer science major. So this is not a universal statement now. It is a existential. There exists some students in this class that are computer science major. So now how do we negate it? Some students, that means not some students, right? Not some students in this class are computer science major. That means nobody are computer science major, right? Or equivalently, that is the same as saying all students are not computer science major. All students in this class, of course, are not. Let me try to emphasize this not again, are not computer science major. So if you feel like you need to think about it, this actually, you can pause the video, think about it. Not some students in this class are computer science major. That's exactly saying none of the students are computer science major. That means all students are not computer science major. Now, again, just try to, so I'm gonna write this into symbolic form. Some students, that means there exists some student X in this class, the class of all students in this class, such that X is CSC major. That's the statement in symbolic form statements. Now let's take a look at its negation. Here's the negation. It says all students, therefore it is a universal statement. So for all student X in this set D, X is not computer science major, right? X is not. I try to emphasize this not again. CSC major. So here comes the next theorem. How do we negate an existential statement? It will become a universal statement, and we have to negate these predicates right there to get the negation. So therefore, it is going to be for all X in D, not QX, right? So not QX. So in other words, the negation of an existential statement will be a universal statement. And don't forget to negate the predicates there. So will be a universal statement. So in words, if you have some or there exists or at least, then the negation will have or, and then we have to negate it. Do or are not, or no one. Now let's, so we have these two results. Let's practice on using these two results. Now here's my suggestion. Sometimes it can be, sometimes if the statements are not too complicated, you may just quickly write the negation without any trouble. But sometimes it is a good exercise, a good strategy to translate this into symbolic form, just like that, and then apply this these two results, like apply these two results, 3.2.1 and 3.2.1 and 3.2.2, I'm sorry, 3.2.2. Apply these two results and then translate the symbolic form back into English statements. That's always good strategy because there will be no, it will be precise and no misunderstanding when you find the negation. Okay, let's try. All my students like me, I hope. Well, so to demonstrate what I meant, I try to write this into symbolic form. All means for all, right? For all students, X. Well, of course, I can say introduce a set D, which is the set of all my students. But if there's no misunderstanding here, in this case, I feel like it's very clear the set of the subjects that we are talking about will be all my students. So I'm gonna just say when there's no misunderstanding, I sometimes just skip that. For all X, X represents any one of my students. X likes me. Okay. And then this is a universal statement. If you can recall that, how do we negate universal statements? We are gonna, the negation will be existential, and then we have to negate the predicates, right? So therefore, we are gonna apply that, and the negation will be the exist X. Remember when you write there exist, always write as such that, and then you have to negate the predicates X dislike me or does not like me. Does not like me. So in other words, now time for me to convert it back into English because we start with an English, we want to convert it, find the negation in English. So now that means there is at least one student who doesn't like me, or I can say some of my students doesn't like me, right? Or at many ways to say it. I'm gonna just say some of my students. I feel like you can use doesn't or do not. That's really don't like me because it may be one or maybe more than one. It's just at least one. So I really don't think that doesn't or don't use plural or singular will matter that much. But so it's okay to use doesn't. Okay. Or you can say at least one students does not like me. So either way. Right? If you would like to try these problems by yourself, I would suggest you pause the video and give it a try. And for the second one, this is an existential. Some of my students like me. I'm going to say there exists X. X means one of my element from the set of all my students, such that X likes me. Right? And let's look at the negation. Negation, by the way, quickly review. How do we negate existential statement? We are going to convert it into, the negation will be universal statements and negates the predicate. So we're going to say for all X, X does not like me. Like me. Okay, this will be a universal statement. So that means all students do not like me, right? In English, all students do not like me. That's the negation. And again, I want to emphasize a typical mistake. Typical mistake will be some people would just say, just negate this guy, like some students do not like me. So I want to make sure that this is not equivalent to this, even though some students may include all students. But it could also include the possibility that only some students, not all of them, do not like me, right? So therefore, this is completely not meaning the same thing as the correct negation. So don't try to resist the temptation of doing that, right? Now let's move on to C. Some of my students don't like me. Okay, so some, that means there exists, right? X such that X does not like me. And that's the symbolic form of this statement. And we are going to find the negation. It will be for all X. X, well, you have to negate this guy. X likes me, right? The negation of X doesn't like me will be X likes me. And its English sentence means all students like me. All students like me, okay, all like me. And some of you may already recognize, hey, this some of my students don't like me, like this is the same as this one. So its negation will be that one, which is true, okay. But the last one, none of my students like me. So again, definitely pause the video and then give it a try first. This is a universal students. That means none of my students like me. That means they all dislike me. So they all do not like me. So that means they all do not like me, right? That's equivalent to say that. So therefore, I'm going to say for all X, X does not like me. And its negation will be there exists X such that, and negates this guy, X likes me. X likes me. And the English sentence will be some students like me, right?